it's Tammy Ball. In this video module, I'm going to give you some tips and techniques to be able to do a great introduction to any presentation. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how to have a good conclusion. Now that you know how to write the middle content by using the AIM model, audience, intent, and message, you're ready to prepare how you're going to open up and begin this talk. I always recommend when you're doing a formal presentation to greet the audience and say your name. Even if you've been introduced onto stage or into the room by a host, it's a good idea to let the audience hear you say your own name. The next thing you'll want to do before diving into your content is establish some credibility. Statistics say that an audience will know in the first 1 to 3 minutes of someone's presentation if they are worthy and they're credible enough to be heard. So you want to establish your credibility by giving some sort of credibility statement. I'll give you an example of what I use. If I'm asked to speak about change in the workplace, I will tell the audience that I served for 15 years as the change director of a large organization with about 10,000 employees. And in that time, I wrote and implemented hundreds of successful change programs. That's my simple credibility statement when it has to do with the subject of change. So you'll need to greet, state your name, give a credibility statement of some sort. Next, before you dive into your content, you want to hook your audience. You want them on the edge of their seat leaning forward to hear every word that comes out of your mouth. So, here's some ideas to get that done. You can start with a question that gets their mind rolling about the subject. You can quote a statistic. People like to hear about statistics. You can state an anecdote. Or you can start a story. If you plan to use a story format to weave throughout your presentation, this is a good place to start it. Sometimes you can say something a little controversial about your subject. I like to use that one. That gets them on my side immediately. So those are some ideas I want you to consider before you stand up and dive into a content. State your name, establish your credibility, and then hook them in some way, shape, or form about your subject. Get them to really start thinking about your worthiness of speaking to them at that moment. Now, in conclusions, a lot of people really don't do this well, even if they had a great presentation. I've messed up conclusions before, many times. But I've learned now it doesn't take much effort to wrap up this presentation and hand it to them like a lovely little present. That was a little play on words there. I recommend if you're selling something, you give a call to action. Ask them for the sell. If you're using an influential speech, then you'll want to have them go away with something that they might do differently in the next hour, in the next day, next week. Get them to really consider some of the things that you spoke about. See if they're willing to give it a go. Ask the audience if any of them would like to say what it is they'll do differently. Another good way to conclude is to summarize what you've said. Really hit on that one key message in your summary. And finally, many people simply ask for questions as a conclusion. Nothing wrong with that. Here's my tip on that. If you're going to ask for questions, say, what questions do you have about the 4 phases of change? Or what questions do you have about the 3 questions everyone asks themselves when faced with change? And then wait 7 seconds before you move on to give the audience time to ask a question. Finally, thank them, let them know you've had a good time, and let them know that you'd like to come back and see them again. It's also a good idea to give your contact information in case you said something that they'd like to speak with you more about later. So, to wrap this up, remember, a good introduction will have a greeting, a credibility statement, and some sort of hook. And then a good conclusion will consist of questions, a call to action, or what are you going to do next week to change your behavior? Thanks for listening. Bye.